Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday webinar. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm joined by Donna, and Donna's going to be our guest for today. But we were just speaking a minute ago about it being very sunny, and this is probably why there's a lack of numbers. So I appreciate you guys showing up. And if you are watching this on the replay, then again, if you want to reach out, feel free to do so. So before we start, if you've joined, just use the chat box. Let me know if you can hear me and see us. Just say yes if you can. We've got Pia, we've got Caroline, we've got Anita. And then Donna, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Muggy.
Good.
All good.
Yeah, I know. And we were just saying as well that when you're doing these webinars, you can't have a fan on because otherwise it's so loud. So if me and Donna just start dripping with sweat, you've just got to bear with us. But yeah, thank you guys for confirming. But yeah, this is a really sort of interesting topic that we wanted to focus on. And this month within the app and the content within the app, we've had a focus on women's mental health. So we've obviously spoken about menopause, breastfeeding, body image, postnatal depression, and we really wanted to tie in it with this webinar and find out a little bit more about you, Donna, and in terms of why positive body image is important and how can we learn to accept ourselves. So before we start, I think what's really important, as we always do, guys, is just let us know how are you in the chat box. How's your week been? Have you had any challenges? How's your week been, Donna, apart from being overheated?
Overheated. Yeah, it's been all right. I'm house sitting at the moment, and it's a lovely house. So I'm loving life. Got my own space. Can't be better than that.
And is that with the cat?
Yes, that's with the cat. Pia's got a job offer. Amazing.
Oh wow, amazing. Was that the job that you said, Pia, that you went for the interview with, that you was worried about, or was this another job? Caroline says a teething puppy is distracting work.
I want a puppy.
Oh yeah. Caroline, how old's your pup? I might have asked you this. We're picking up our pup on the 20th. So we're getting a little boxer dog called Rocky.
Yeah, they're the cutest.
And Rocky comes from Paw Patrol, not the boxer. Like the Rocky's still Rocky.
Got it.
Rocky Balboa. I have to point that out. Pia says it wasn't, but it's another one, and it definitely was worth the wait. Amazing. So yeah, I think there was a lot of anxiety around that, Pia, right? So definitely it's worked out in the end.
Good for you.
I counted 5 months.
Apart from
melting. Looking forward to this session. Cool. So we're all in the same boat. We're all melting, right? Janine's just joined as well. So cool. Let's just start. So positive body image. Learning to accept ourselves. Donna, if we just start, going back, if you can, and if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I may as well just dive straight in. A lot of this will be around bulimia and how my poor body image led to a very unhealthy relationship with food and just an awful cycle for many, many years. So it first developed when I was 16. I'm a type A personality, so I'm very self-critical, very high standards. And so I was studying very hard for exams, putting a lot of pressure on myself. It wasn't coming from anywhere else, just on myself. And that at the same sort of time, I started going to the gym with a friend just because, and started getting some compliments from the boys that I'd lost a bit of weight. I wasn't overweight in the slightest, but just lost a bit of puppy fat, I guess. And then obviously started to really attach my self-worth to the way my body looked, because that's how you got compliments and that's how you appeared better to people. So started a very unhealthy cycle. Basically, if you're starting to lose weight, your weight is going to plateau at some point just naturally. But of course, as soon as your weight stops dropping on the scales, you panic. And even worse, you don't want to put that weight back on. So, sometimes I was living off very low calories. I was finding foods that was just so low in calories, but no nutritional value. I remember eating like spaghetti hoops and smash for a while that's got pretty much no nutritional value, but it was like, no, but it's low calorie and that's all that matters. I saw counsellors. I saw a couple of counsellors on and off. I saw one at 17 when I told my parents about my issues, and Dad insisted that I went to a counsellor. She did really help. But I think, when it comes to poor body image and food, it's something that is really, it has to be maintained ongoing. So I think you can have some counselling, but unless you're implementing things in the longer term, it's not really going to be a long-term solution. So I would say 20 years of binging and purging on and off. Some better times, some well-managed times where I wouldn't do that, and then some awful times, usually around stressful periods, emotional times, because as most of us will know, food disorders are usually rooted in control issues and a lack of control. So you use the food as that crutch. It's a lot of the same as self-harming. It's the same it's that form of control over your body, and an awful thing to do. I mean, I remember I used to say I hate food. I hated food with a passion, because unlike an alcoholic or a smoker, I couldn't give up food. I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop smoking. I had to eat food. And yet I was so disillusioned and confused about how to get out of this cycle. I just hated it. And I used to say, I wish I could just take a tablet that gave me whatever I needed nutrition-wise and then just forget it, because I could imagine doing that. Okay, just block everything else out. Just take this one tablet. And I now look back at my late teens and my 20s, and I'm so sad for that girl, because I wasted so much time and energy on thinking about food and how I disliked my body. And I remember it distinctly, that I would be having conversations with people and not be listening to them. Instead, it was, what did I eat today? Okay, so that was that calories, and I wasn't listening. I wasn't present. I wasn't paying attention. And these are friends and family that I love, and yet I just wasn't there. So there were some pretty dark times. I've experienced depression on and off, but I think 100% related to all those issues around food and body image. Take those away, and I don't think I would have struggled with depression particularly. So that's where I feel that it was all it all stemmed from. I had some wonderful sort of long-term boyfriends along the way, who tried to understand, but couldn't. I mean, it's a hard thing to understand, Yeah. Why would you eat and then throw up? It's a very odd thing for someone who doesn't understand it and doesn't get it. But the actual act of binging and purging is obviously the byproduct of this incredibly low self-esteem and this poor body image that you have. So I would say kind of towards my late 20s, getting to my 30s, I was just kind of sick of it all. I just thought, is this going to be it? Is this going to be me until I'm 60, 70 years old? Because that just seemed like a really bleak prospect. And that's not to say that I didn't have good times in my 20s. I had lots of good times. But when I look back, there's definitely big periods where it was like, what a sad thing to have experienced. So that's probably some of my background. I don't know if you wanted to go into, if you had any questions about that in particular, or if I just
I was just sitting back, because it's inspiring to hear people's stories, and I think a big part of mental health and the work that we do is that personal experience element, and it's almost like giving you the floor to just to share, because I think it's so powerful, and I'm sure people feel the same way as I do at the moment. And there's a couple of things that stood out which I'll piggyback off, if you don't mind. The first one was almost like, as you say, that low self-esteem, almost learning to love yourself. And then secondly, I can just kind of imagine from my own personal experiences as well, the exhaustion that you must have been experiencing, right? Because like you said, you're having conversations with people and all you can think about is the calories and the food that you ate and all of that, and that just must have been exhausting. So in terms of that and dealing with that for such a long time, was there like a changing point? I mean, obviously you're vocal about it now, and you're doing some amazing work. How in a way did stuff start to change for you?
I think, like I said, it was a point where I just thought, I've had enough of this. I've really had enough. It is exhausting, especially in my younger years. I remember I wouldn't want people to hear me being sick. So I would stay up really late until everyone else had gone to bed, and I was comfortable that they couldn't hear me. So I was tired all the time. I wasn't eating enough calories generally. So I didn't have the energy, and your mind is going like 100 miles an hour because you're worried about everything. So it's an exhausting way to live. And I just kind of had enough. And then I saw a documentary by a lady called Taryn Brumfitt. She's an Australian lady, and it's called Embrace. And something just really resonated with me. And she put up a picture on Facebook or Instagram, and it was a before and after shot, but she'd done them the other way around. So she was like,
Right.
her skinny shot she was saying, I was so unhappy here, and yet she'd put on weight, and that was her happy. And it gained a lot of traction. It really kind of hit a nerve with a lot of people. So I watched her documentary, and I was on a plane going from New Zealand, coming back, because I used to live in New Zealand, and something just clicked, and I just thought, this is it. I have to start looking at myself in a different way. So what I started to do is running challenges. I started to look at what my body could do as opposed to how it looked, and it will be different for everyone. People will like cycling, they will like any kind of thing, but for me it was running. And I actually started to realize I was quite good at running, and I think anyone can become better at running. I think maybe you do need a touch of natural ability, but for me it's more like dedication, consistency, motivation. They're the things that can make you a good runner. So I started doing these running challenges, and I did my first marathon in 2015. And I just remember thinking, well, like, I respected my body. I was in awe of my body for the first time ever. So rather than seeing it as this awful vessel that I was so sick of and looking in the mirror at and being down on myself, I started to see it as an amazing thing, a machine. And that was where so along with that documentary, that's where it all started kind of clicking into place. So the running challenges, got a bit mad. I decided after the first marathon I did, which I ran in memory of a friend that we lost, then I decided to up the ante a bit and do 3 marathons in 3 months. And again, I thought, I don't know if I can do that, but I did what I, trained, and I did what I should do, and I did it. And then I decided to do a 100-kilometer race, which I did over 2 days. And then most recently, in April/May this year, because of COVID times and I had a little bit more time on my hands, I decided to run 30 half marathons in 30 days, which was, I learned so much about myself during that, when you feel powerful and strong, it's like no other feeling. And when you're so used to years of low self-esteem and looking at yourself in a poor way, it's incredible when you finally start respecting yourself. And then when you start respecting yourself, you start treating yourself better. It just happens naturally. So you don't want to be stuffing your face full of awful food. When I say awful food, I don't think that any food is bad for you. But when you're binging and it's a form of self-punishment, that's awful. And you don't want to do that to yourself anymore. So really, the whole body image thing, the poor relationship with food, if you can fix the self-esteem issue, then you're halfway there. I think it's where it all comes from. And as soon as you start setting yourself little challenges, and it doesn't have to be 30 half marathons in 30 days, that's from years of running experience, but you can set yourself some kind of challenge. And so I became a PT last year at the grand old age of 37, because I wanted people to realize what that felt like. And it doesn't have to be running, but it could be that you're lifting a certain weight. It could be that you're just moving better in your body. And so I'd always had this passion around health and fitness, because I was kind of it was almost like I wanted to put 2 fingers up to all of the hardship I'd had around health and fitness and do something really positive with it. So when you are used to tracking calories and understanding exercise, that's all very positive, but obviously for me it was clouded by all this other horrible stuff. And so when that other horrible stuff started to kind of become smaller and smaller, then my love for health and fitness just completely took over, and I really wanted to share that with other people. And yet I still it took me to 37 to become a PT, because I told myself for years that I was too old to do it. I didn't have the body shape to do it, wasn't fit enough to do it. And then, something in me last year just said, no more of that. I'm doing it. So I did it online, and there's a lot of people that can become online PTs, and they might not necessarily be very good at it. But I research and I do as much as I can to make myself a good coach. And the people that I love are the people that promote, I don't have a six pack, and I'm not going to get one. And now I don't want one, because the level of dedication that will take is not something that I'm willing to put in. All I actually want from my body is for it to work well, to not feel pain, and to move well into old age. So I became a PT, and learning about the body, that was another element of it. So it wasn't just that I started respecting my body, it was just that I understood how things work. So I was like, oh, okay, so I didn't understand that before, and that's because that's how that works. And it suddenly just becomes really interesting. So all the stuff that you pushed down and you didn't want to know about suddenly becomes your hobby. So that was the turning point, when I started to focus on what it could do as opposed to how it looked.
That's amazing. And Anita has said that as well. And that's something that resonated with me as well, is see what your body can do and not what it looks like. If you have that almost changed perception of your body, it can be powerful. And like you said, looking at your body and what it can achieve rather than how it looks. And you also spoke about like self-esteem and the impact that has on everything that you've experienced. And I'd love to talk about that in a little bit more as well. Pia says that's amazing. It's great when you have those goals, because you know that you need the food and energy from the food to reach those goals. I relate to that from being a gymnast. Also, Donna, I'm going to have to get your advice on a separate call, because in March I'm doing 8 marathons in 8 days in 8 cities for children's mental health.
Amazing.
So, and I'm not nowhere near that yet.
We will chat. We will talk.
Yeah, I love it. I'll pay you to be my PT. So I think there's loads here that I want to talk about, right? Loads. But the thing that's on my mind, and this just is purely from personal experience, right? Obviously, as people know that come on these webinars a lot, sadly I lost my dad to suicide when I was 18, and my dad was someone, when I look back at that, people used to call him Mr. Perfect, because from the outside looking in, everything was fine. And my dad was a huge runner, right? And my dad would go in the mornings, in the nights, very good runner. He'd become the veteran 1500 meter champion, like very, very good. But my dad, now I look at that and I understand OCD a lot more as well. My dad was very obsessed with it, right? There's stories that my mum tells when she just had my brother, he's older than me, and she was struggling, a new mum, she was only a young mum. And she said to my dad when he come back from work, look, I need help. And he was like, no, I've got to go for my run. She said, you go for that run. Like, I'm not here when you come back, right? But he still had to go for that run. She didn't leave, but it was that obsession, and he had to go for a run in the morning. My dad had a book, he'd write down all of his times, everything, this is before apps and things like that. And I have that in me, right? And, sometimes I'm a big runner, and there's times, where I haven't been for a run in the morning and I'm just off. Like, it's almost like, I don't know, there's just something inside of me that's like, you should have gone for a run. And it's that constant sort of beating myself up. And I've spoken to like you and Jess and Hope Virgo and other people. And obviously there's that real fine line I find between pushing yourself and it becoming an obsession that controls you, right? So, what advice do you have for people on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between because exercise addiction goes hand in hand with, poor body image. And so in my early 20s, I would be at the gym relentlessly. I wouldn't get off the treadmill until I'd burnt a certain amount of calories. So it's all around numbers. So obviously for your dad, it would be his times. Was he faster? Was he, it's all numbers. And definitely you can get into these really unhealthy habits. And then if you don't go out for a run, it's like, oh God, the world has ended, and it feels very uncomfortable. Which is a huge change to how I look at it now. So yesterday I got on the treadmill, because I've got a treadmill in the house I'm house sitting at, and I ran a half marathon because it was here and I just wanted to do it, and it was something that I said I was going to do. And I hadn't run a half marathon since my last one, which was like May 21st. just because I wanted to. But before that, I haven't run. But my mantra my mantra now is move your body. Just movement is medicine. So it's not about numbers for me. And with numbers, I'm very anti. I love Hope Virgo, by the way, because she is all about ditching the scales. And I cannot, now I've got a couple of clients, or a few clients, and I love explaining to them why the scales are not important. As soon as you start putting numbers around things, it can become an obsession. So obviously you've got to do this marathon challenge that you've taken on, and that's great. But it'd be very easy for you to start saying, right, well, this is my training plan and I must hit that and I must hit that. And if I haven't hit that, then that's bad. And you criticize yourself. You have to think about the bigger picture and be like, am I getting out? Am I moving my body? Have I done 2K? Even though I was going to plan 10, but I've done 2. That's okay. And it's really hard not to get sucked into all those numbers. And a mantra of mine that I always repeat to myself is, you are not the sum of your measurements. Obviously that's more factored in body image, but you're not. No one is ever the sum of their measurements. So whether that's that you're measuring your running times or whatever. So the ladies that I work with, I say, do not get on the scales. Like I implore you to throw them out, because we've completely lost sight of what health means. And, in my world, I wish no one owned a pair of scales and no one measured themselves, and you did it purely on how you feel. You did it based on your mood levels. And, I had people, so I'm running a 30-day recharge at the moment. And so it's looking at, your body image, but also your sleep, your identifying your values, your strengths, all that kind of stuff. But at the beginning I had some rules and I said no scales, and someone said to me, but how do I know if what are my results then? How do I know if I've progressed? And I'm like, well, is your sleep better? Do you feel better? Is your mood lifted? How's your energy? We don't focus on these things. We focus just on what that scale says, or just on what that tape measure says. And it's the same with running. We focus on what distance did you do? How fast did you do it? And it's a real shame, because it's not what it's about. All you're ever trying to do is just be fit and healthy. Really, that's all we're trying to achieve here. So I would say, you sang about your dad, and I'm really sorry that you lost him. That's very tragic. And I can see how, he sounds like a type A personality as well, very focused, very high standards. And it's hard to stop that. If that's ingrained in you, it's hard to not take those on board. But what you can do is you can make sure that you're focusing on the right things, so that when those OCD tendencies do want to crop up, you've got enough of a foundation there to kind of, bat them away. I try to, the tools that I use, for a start, I try and track other things. So resting heart rate is a good one. Like I said, your mood, your energy levels, your sleep. Try and focus on the stuff that is important about our health. Because if you're training and you're running yourself ragged and you're not recovering properly and you're not eating the right things, you're not doing your body any good. If you're running less but treating your body really well, you're going to get a better result for your 8 marathons. That's just how it works.
I love that. I love that. Sorry to jump in, but just tracking how we feel rather than tracking, those numbers in a way. It's like, I know now, and again, it's, I'm not really focused on, it's because maybe it's March. I'm like, I just want to get out running, right? But, this morning just went out, didn't have any intention, but hey, I've got 50 minutes before I've got to get back for the first meeting with a client. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to run. It wasn't very fast, because, I went for a sort of faster one at the weekend, but it's how I felt and how I know I feel after that run. If I don't go out in the mornings, it has an impact on my day, right? And sometimes, like last week, I had 4 back-to-back webinars, which is like me sharing my story. And if I don't go for that run in the morning, doesn't matter how long it is, whether it's like 15 minutes, as you've said, how I feel and how that sets me up for the day is huge. And I've never thought of it that way, because even still, this is good, but this is also a pain in the backside, because, it tells me everything, right? And I think, like you say, if I track how I feel, that's a huge impact. Guys, let me know in the chat box. Can you relate to this in any way, or if there's anything that you want to share? Because there's a couple of stuff here that's come up to me, and I never thought of it that way. So it's really, really key. One thing I want to ask you, Donna, is the self-esteem part of it as well. How would you say, or what would you say was the catalyst to improving your self-esteem? And did you ever know what was the cause of your very low self-esteem that led to a lot of the problems that you faced?
My self-esteem is purely caused because my standards of myself were so high that I lived in a permanent state of disappointment. It's not a nice place to be when you can never achieve your standards. And, there's probably some psychology into certain people in my life that I was trying to live up to expectations I thought they had as well, which are completely unfounded. These are all things that go on in your head and you project onto other people. But that constant not feeling good enough, that will undoubtedly lead to poor body image, low self-esteem. And then also we are absolutely bombarded by media images of what we're supposed to look like, be like. I'm always very mindful with my running challenges. I know that someone could look at that and be like, oh my God, 30 half marathons in 30 days, that's incredible. And what I'm trying to show people is, yeah, it is, I guess it is amazing, but it's actually doable. And with the right attitude, with the right training, as long as you've got no major injuries, then you can do it as well. And so I'm very mindful that I don't want, we put people on pedestals, we do it naturally. Those people are never no one's ever better than you or worse than you. It's just it's how we perceive things. So if you're constantly fed images and messages that we should be a certain way, chances are we're going to feel bad about ourselves. It's just the way that our brains are programmed. So something I do, I follow all the right people. My Instagram is very selective. I follow about 110 people at the moment. So I don't follow loads of people. So the messages that I get on my newsfeed are just the people that I've selected. And they will be either people that are that inspire me. So people that do challenges. They are really body positive advocates. So like your Hope Virgos, like your Body Posy Panda, there's Dana E. Mercer, Alex Light, Iskra, all these wonderful women. And so whenever I open my Instagram in the morning, I've got a picture straight away of someone showing off their cellulite, saying this is totally normal. Please do not think any less of yourself. And it infiltrates gradually. Your mind does start to change. And even though you might still want that ideal body that you've got in your head, as long as you're realizing that there is a greater percentage of people than you thought that actually have a normal body, that does make you feel better. And so now, on Feel Good Friday, on my Instagram, I just usually put a picture of me dancing, and you can see that my tummy is, I'm not overweight by any means. I'm fit and healthy, but I'm never going to have a washboard stomach. And, I've got a bit of fat there where I've had years of yo-yo dieting and binging and all over the place. So, but I like showing it off because I'm like, it doesn't make me less of a person. I just smashed out a half marathon on the treadmill, and yet I don't have abs. I'm never going to have abs. So you don't have to look like a machine to be a machine.
I love that.
That's another one that I love. And I just kind of like, I've done it. When I did my first marathon, I was bigger than I am now. And I like looking back at those pictures because I'm like, oh, look, I was probably a stone heavier then, but it was like my fastest marathon that I ran. So you've got to keep feeding yourself these messages that you're capable of things. And your worth is just not attached to your body. It just isn't. What I tried to get, so one of the exercises that I asked my ladies to do was on day 1 of our 30 days was write a list of things you like about yourself. And, some people will feel very uncomfortable and think that's really cheesy. Other people love all that stuff, but it's important, and I said, don't just write the list, put it up somewhere, get creative, make it colourful. Maybe your kids could help do it with you. They could add some things on there because, what better message for your kids than being aware of things you like about yourself. And I tell them to try not to focus on the physical things first. So, do all the the intrinsic values that you have, the way that you treat people, put all that kind of stuff. What do you like about yourself? And then at the end, then you can do, I like my hair, or I like my nails, or whatever, because that's where it should be. It should be down the bottom of that list, because it's not the most important. Not really sure if that answered your question. I went off on a slight tangent.
Yeah, it's great. And I think I was just going to jump in what Anita has said as well. I mean, that one strategy of clearing out your news feed is so important, and the impacts that social media has not only on just body image, self-esteem, but mental health as a whole. And I talk a lot about it, how there's a massive sort of rap about social media is bad for mental health, and of course it is, but at the same time that's if we allow social media to control us and we don't control social media, right? I think social media is great. That gives me a platform to share my story and gets that out there and tries to help people that want to share, their own experiences as well. And at the same time, as you've said, if we wake up every morning and we open up the newspaper, who is controlling, who is controlling our conditioning? It's the newspapers that we're reading.
Yeah.
And Anita said as well, she did the same, cleared out her sort of, accounts and immediately started to feel better as well. Janine says at 11 years of age and 5'10" tall.
Wow.
I was not included in a chart detailing the height of my classmates because I was taller than the teacher. I went through my teens feeling I was a freak of nature, which definitely impacted my self-esteem, which was non-existent. Wow, Janine, that's terrible to hear, and I can only imagine the kind of impact that has as a whole as well.
Yeah, that's I mean, God, in your well, any age that you're younger, but especially when you're kind of coming into your teens and really trying to work yourself out. I've always thought to myself, if you're a tall lady, that's hard, because there's a lady that I work with, and she's lovely and she's very tall, but you can tell she walks hunched, because she's obviously got so used to trying to make herself small. So I think life's hard enough when you don't have any obvious physicality that draws attention. So, but being tall, especially for a girl, that's you can't get away from that. It's a bit different, but I had big feet when I'm only 5'4", but I just seem to have these, like, I'm a size 7, 8 now, but I had these feet when I was like 12. And I remember just being so conscious of these feet. And it's amazing how much, like, people probably didn't even really notice, but to me, it was so embarrassing, like excruciatingly. And that sort of thing, it really embeds deep in there. So, and if someone says something to you, then it's like, oh goodness, and if Janine got some horrible comments, then, that really teaches you to kind of disappear. You just want to, I used to think to myself all the time, I just want to be invisible. Which is, what a sad thing. There was something else that I was going to, so Pia was just saying as well that it's an ongoing struggle for her to focus on how she feels and not the goal that she set for herself and might not always achieve. One of the greatest sadnesses in life is that people do not try to do things that they want to do because they're so scared of not achieving that goal. I don't really like the word failure, because I think we've got such negative connotations to the word failure. But to me, if I set a challenge and if I don't reach it, so for example, I don't want to jinx your 8 marathons, but what if you don't do it? What if you pick up an injury and at number 4 you have to say, I've really hurt myself, I can't actually do anymore? What happens at that point? Well, you realize that actually the world didn't end, and you are going to use it as a really good learning tool. So, failures are just learnings. That's all they are. And the amount of people I've spoken to, and I've got one particular friend who, she's done several half marathons and she's a good runner. She will not, even though she really wants to, she will not sign up to a marathon because she's convinced that she won't be able to do it in as good a time as she would like. And I'm like, that is so sad. Like, you're never, ever going to feel that sense of achievement of running over the finish line of a full marathon, even though you really want to, because you're so scared that you might not be able to do it. But I'm telling you now, if you got to 3/4 of the way round and pulled out, no one's going to laugh at you. Like, no one is going to laugh at you. They're just going to be like, well, I'm impressed that you did 3/4, because not many people have run a marathon. And I mean, I use running analogies because I'm a runner, but that's the same as anything. And I just think it's so incredibly sad that we are so dictated to by either our own expectations of ourselves or the fear of embarrassment in front of others. I wish we didn't live in a world like that.
Yeah, I like that as well. And we've spoken a lot about that during these tough times, is that expectations of like working from home, right? I'm working from home, I've got these high expectations. I've got to get all this work done. I've got these high expectations that, my boss or my manager or whoever it is wants me to do loads of work. And when we come to it and when we strip it all back, those are just expectations that your mind's making up, right? You might have that conversation with your employer and they say, no, you're doing fine. We don't expect you to be 100% productive during this difficult time. So I really like that of expectations. And it's almost like you say, of being kind to ourselves. Failure, as you've said, is something that, we need to rephrase. It's as you say, it's a learning. I always love that, the Edison quote. I'm sure you've seen it, of, when he failed however many times to create the light bulb, and they said, what does it feel like to fail that many times? He was like, I never failed. I just found out, however many times not to make the light bulb, or something like that, which I love as well. But the other thing as well, and this might be a little bit, I don't know, spiritual or holistic, whatever you want to call it, but attaching ourselves to an outcome, right? And as you've said, I know in my own journey of let's say, trying to get a six pack or whatever, I'm always attached to that outcome, right? And that slog to get to that outcome and not being able to get to that outcome is exhausting, Or I think back to like a couple of years ago when I was in business, and for that it was about how much money I want to earn. And it's a slog to get to that much money you want to earn. And then when you get there, that's like, still not happy. I'm going to make it here. And then it's a slog to get there. And a big part of what I've learned, and I think is something that you was alluding to as well, of just loving the process, just enjoying the process, not attaching like a specific outcome. Like you've said, like you're not trying to get a six pack. It's almost in a way, you're just doing it because, it feels good to you, and it's a health goal that you've got. So is there any kind of advice that you'd give to people who are consistently attaching themselves to that outcome, and how they can remove themselves from that?
So two things. First of all, I would start journaling. If people don't journal, it's really useful to identify what you're thinking and then trying to unpack why you're thinking that. Like, why are you attached to a goal? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Is it a feeling of accomplishment? Are there other ways that you could feel accomplished? That whole thing about what you said about your boss, I try and tell myself every now and again when I'm trying to get lots of things done, I'm like, just remember that your mediocre is probably a lot of people's excellent. So just remember that you don't actually have to do all this stuff. This is just your standards. So like, just drop them a bit. But when you attach yourself to a goal, I really think that you're completely losing a connection with your body. Like, you're seeing it as a separate thing. So obviously business is a bit different, but with your body, if you're trying to achieve a six pack, or if you're trying to achieve a 10K under a certain time or whatever, you've completely lost sight of your body and how it, and like I'm trying to explain to my recharge ladies at the moment, it all becomes about calories and what you put in your body and this and that and this and that. But it's just like, what do you want to do for yourself? Like, how does that run feel? Like, straight away, I'm going to say to you, take that watch off for your next run. And as uncomfortable as it feels, run without knowing the time, what your pace is. And trust me, I know that's difficult because I used to be someone who was fixated on numbers. But you suddenly go, this is what a good run is supposed to feel like. Oh, look at the trees, they look pretty. And my breathing feels a bit better today. Or I feel a little bit of a twinge in my, you just become a lot more connected because you're not focused on this time all the time. So I would just say, try to connect with yourself. And I mean, I love meditation, I love yoga, I love all the things that are spiritual and take you kind of into yourself. Breathing, breath work is just a massive thing that's kind of exploded onto the scene, but it is huge. So it is a form of meditation, obviously, but meditation, I would listen to guided meditations. And there's so many guided meditations. You could literally Google in, fear of failure guided meditation. They're tailored for all sorts. But then the breath work it does weird things. It's like, I don't know if you've ever done like the Wim Hof and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Makes you go,
especially like you say for performance, but also just clarity as well. Like, Wim Hof. I mean, there's a guy who's in the app called Matt Bagwell. He talks a lot about breath work and how that's impacted him. So
and I think
it's huge.
Once you start doing all these things and they just become ingrained habits, something I also highly recommend is putting your power song on every morning without fail. So for week 1 of my challenge, it was This Is Me, the Greatest Showman tracks. I love it. Nice. This week I've gone for Alicia Keys, Girl on Fire. And so before anything, you literally wake up and I drink a pint of water and I whack my power song on, and that is it. So I've kind of, at least I've had some good words going in here before anything else. Then I do a journal, and I only do it for 10 minutes. It's not very long, but sometimes you wake up and you go, I don't think I feel very good today. And why don't I feel very good? Or you've caught yourself looking in the mirror and going, God, like, wish I was just a bit lighter, or why can't I get that flat stomach? And then as soon as you write down, you're like, why do I want that? It's because I've been told by society and media images for years that I should look like that. Well, I don't. And, so you just do a bit of a, unpack it a little bit. And then by the end of it, I've kind of made myself, reminded myself what's important and how good I feel. So I think there are some real non-negotiables that you should do in the morning that really set you up on your day. What you said about the run-in, Paul, you saying I need to do that run in the morning to get my head, in the game, that's fine because you're doing it for a positive reason. It's when you're exhausted, you haven't got the time, but something else has to give. So like you're saying with your dad, like regardless of anything, he was going out for his run, and that's when it becomes unhealthy. But for you just wanting to have a quick blast and stretch the legs, that's a very positive thing. What I've got a lot better at doing is not going as far now. So whereas I used to be like, have to do 5 miles, anything less than 5 miles is not good enough. Now I'm like, I'll go out for 1.5 kilometers if I like. I don't need to go. Yeah, exactly. I don't need to go for a long distance.
You'll feel the same. You're still like, oh, I feel better now. It's still
does the same thing.
Impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It still releases the endorphins. The only reason, it's funny, if it's almost like if we could wipe our brains after a run and we don't actually know how far we've run or how fast, we'd just feel good. It wouldn't matter. But of course, we come in the door and go, I only did 2K today. It's not very good. Or someone's, I've got some people that are doing the Couch to 5K on my thing. And, but I'm not very fast, though. First thing they say, I'm not very fast. I'm like, I don't care how fast you are. You've got out. You've moved your legs. Exactly. Why does that matter? So we're still so ingrained in these numbers and these guidelines about what we should achieve. I said about the marathon, you go into Google and you say, what is a good time for a marathon? And generally the consensus is 4 hours or under. If you get under a 4-hour marathon, you're a good runner. And so for a while now, even though I've done these, I actually got a half marathon personal best on day 25 of the 30, which was just unexpected. So my half marathon PB is 1 hour 37, which is good. And now I want to do my full marathon time because I want to see what I can get that to. And then I was just thinking, well, why? Like, why do I want to get under 4 hours? What is that going to give me? And it is a delicate balance because there's nothing wrong with having goals and saying, well, I want to get I want to get a sub 4-hour marathon. Okay, that's fine to have that goal. But we've got to be aware of, if you get that goal, what were you getting it for? What's the point of it? Now, have you got to get a 3.5 hour, 3 hour 15? So you've got to be careful as to why you're doing things. You're raising money by the sounds of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's, for me, it's not about the time. It's just about crossing the line and raising the money and bringing awareness. So, but I think you just hit on a really good point, which is acceptance. Over the last, I'd say 2 years, I've realized, and I sound very similar to you. Sound very similar to me. Acceptance for me was always weakness, right? If I can't keep pushing that needle, if I'm not always improving, I'm struggling, right? I'm weak. And sitting back and saying, actually, I'm pretty happy with where I am, right? Yes, it could be nice to make a bit more money, but equally, I don't necessarily need that. I'm happy where I am. I'm accepting of that. And that acceptance for me has been a massive weight lifted off my shoulders because I'm not always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it's, as you know, it's a completely different way of thinking because I was always told if I'm not pushing myself, then I'm not growing, right? And accepting what we have is sometimes a weakness, like we say. And a big part of that, again, same as you, and I'm sure some people can take this away, of journaling from me. Journaling was massive for me to be able to kind of figure out a lot of that as well. I'm just coming back to some of the comments. Caroline says 100% had that with my boss recently. We do put much more pressure on ourselves. Yeah, so coming back to the expectations. Anita says breath work and power songs, likes that. Janine says love the power song suggestion, and that Donna has recommended things we have been discussing over the weeks. Good stuff. Donna, I'm wary of time. I want to ask you a big question. How do you view yourself now?
I view myself as a strong person, and that is mainly because I have set the terms and I have decided what my own gauges are for success and for how good I feel. So I decide that now, not any other image or nothing external makes me feel anything. It's what I decide. And I get up every morning and I always say, sometimes I'm lazy. Sometimes I miss my runs. Sometimes I smash out a half marathon. Sometimes I drink alcohol. Sometimes I do dry July. And I have set those terms and I am happy with that. I'm happy carrying a bit of belly fat. I no longer feel the need to try and get this ideal body, whatever that is. So I'm proud of myself, and I view myself as a good model for other people. That's what you should be aiming for. The ladies that I'm working with at the moment, they're all a bit kind of, because I'm just sort of like, it's your choice. Like, it's how you want to live your life. So you usually go onto a diet plan and it's restriction, restriction, restriction. And I'm like, no, what I want you to do is get to a point where you feel good about yourself in your body. You will therefore naturally make better decisions, and then you will enjoy the more nutritious food. So rather than eating it because you have to, you want to, it's, and you can still have your treats, but you can see how it really throws people that they're like, what, no restriction? Like it's very uncomfortable. People want guidelines. They want instructions. And when you actually say, do it your way, like honestly, do it your way. And you'll find that if people say, well, yeah, but if I did it my way, I'd just eat cake every day. I don't think you would. If you respected yourself and you accepted and loved yourself, you might have a piece of cake a day, and that's fine, but you wouldn't sit there and stuff 5 pieces of cake in your mouth, because you just wouldn't. So I view myself as I've got a very healthy attitude. And my goodness, when I think about that poor girl that had her head stuck down the toilet, hating everything about herself, it's just a million miles away. So I also, like to speak out about bulimia, because I want people to realize that if you're trapped in that cycle, it doesn't matter how old you are. It took a long, long time for me to get to this point. So it's never too late. It's never, ever too late to finally break out of those destructive thought patterns. You can do it.
Amazing. I love that. Guys, do you guys have any questions that you want to ask Donna? If you don't, again, as always, just say no questions, because otherwise, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I just end up sitting here waiting for questions to come in, and no one asks a question. But no, just from me, like you've inspired me. Like I feel like just doing my next webinar with my top off and just sitting there with the rolls hanging out. But I think what you've said is, I read a lot of spirituality books and a lot of, like Wayne Dyer, for example. Like I had Wayne Dyer in my ear this morning, and he was talking about, until we can learn to love ourselves, how are we meant to show love to others? And a big part of me starting to do the work that I did was a 7-year journey of me having to love and forgive myself and forgive, my dad and all of that comes with suicide, to then start saying, hey, I want to help people. Like I would never have been able to do that before, because you have to learn to love yourself first, right?
I'll just say,
I really love that.
Brené Brown is another podcast that I've just discovered. It hasn't been running for that long, but yeah, I was listening to her, and again, just a really nice person to listen to, because she's just like, I don't know what the bloody hell I'm doing, just the same as anybody else. She doesn't profess to be an expert in anything, but the way she talks is just very comforting, and you're like, yeah, cool, I resonate.
Yeah, and it's I love that. And even I can't remember who it was, Michael Singer maybe, when he was like, if you stand in front of a mirror and you see your body, right, it's still your mind, it's still your own beliefs that's telling you what that body looks like. Now if you take that body away, you still have the same. Internally, you're the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You could replace the external, but internally it's exactly the same. So like he said exactly the same thing. The focus of always changing ourselves externally is a losing battle. We have to first work on the internal.
Absolutely.
I'm inspired by you, and by the sounds of it, everyone else is as well.
We have to chat. We have to talk about this 8 marathons. I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, 100%. And also as well, like I said, this is the start, and we'd love to get you to do some content for the app, and
absolutely.
Maybe get you to share your story in more detail. So, definitely, guys, if you are a user of the Everymind app, I'm sure you'll see Donna in there over the next couple of months as well. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time out to watch and to engage. And Donna, once again, from me and everyone else, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story and wisdom as well.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much. See you soon. Bye.